Hey everybody, welcome to the Bass Shed Podcast. My name's Ryan Roberts. Alright, so today on the show we have a vibraphonist, Nick Mancini. He also is a composer, band leader, arranger, educator. Nick's got his hands in a lot of things, musical. Alright, here's what happened with this. So, what did we do? We recorded this Monday, and we were in it. Like, Nick and I were in it. We were about an hour and a half in, and it was going great. We had this really nice rhythm going. Like, the conversation had it kind of really opened up, and we were covering a lot of ground of not only his personal history, but some projects he's working on right now, and the history, the cultural history of some of these projects. And like I said, we're about an hour and a half in, and then the computer crashes. And maybe that's my fault. The computer crash isn't my fault. I blame, well, maybe it's because of the computer I have. In that case, it's my fault. I don't know about that. Also, the backup system. I got to figure out what to do with the backup system here. Anyways, lost that. So instead of trying to like go back and recapture what we had done and all the information we had covered, it was gone. It was gone. I mean, the information's not gone. It still exists because that's not only his life and what he's up to, but that conversation that way was gone. So the best we could do was just pick up and keep going. So that's what you're going to hear with the talk with Nick Mancini. Is we kind of referenced some things we had talked about. There's some jokes that probably won't make sense, but they did at the time. No, that's not true. They did not at the time, but that's why they were funny. Just the context made sense at the time. Anyway, so that's the talk with Nick Mancini. Thank you for everybody who had responded about the Rustlin, my talk with Rustlin. It was really cool to see all the feedback I got from that. On social media, you can find The Bass Shed at Facebook /The Bass Shed, on Instagram at The Bass Shed, Twitter at Bass Shed. What else am I on there? I think those are the main three, right? I think that's it. You can find I don't know where you're listening to this right now, but you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Or Google Podcasts. Like I know I signed it up for it and got. I know it's on there. I know it's on Google, but I don't know if it's Google Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts. Like I went looking for it the other night, and I couldn't even find it. But I'll get that link out. I'll figure out what Google's up to, and I'll send out a link. If you're interested in subscribing on Google. So with that, we're just gonna jump in. Here's the talk with Nick Mancini.
Then that's it, and I'm out of your hair. And he's like, how's early December? I was just like, I don't know. I'll have a baby by then. I'm not sure what's going on.
Probably not as cool as
It's
Thursday.
like, I don't know, Thursday.
Yeah. Thursday would work out a lot better for me.
Better for me.
Right, you have no hours.
Not a single.
Not an hour to spare. What's that life like?
So,
all right, let's see what happens here. So,
we're either back or
we're back from commercial break.
Okay.
We may have just lost like over an hour of. We were in it. That was good shit.
Yeah, that was good. Too bad y'all missed it. Yeah. Oh well. Should have been there.
So thanks for doing this, man. That was Nick Mancini. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, see you on the next one.
This is excellent. I had a blast.
We were talking about the nature of patrons at live gigs. I'm just picking up the conversation.
Right. Let's just go from there. Why
Yeah.
not? All that history and all that
Yeah, you
interesting
guys
stuff
missed
about
everything
me.
else about
Oh well.
Mule Skinner
Right.
and Frames Die Hard 2.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What are the other highlights?
Shoro.
Shoro?
We spoke for a moment about Shoro, but
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
quite certain
we
it
should
was
come back to
mostly
that.
Uninformed, so it's okay that you missed that.
There's a lot of good stuff there.
Actually, so while we were talking about that, Afton texted me she overheard my struggling with a description about choro music. So she said, just like ragtime in the United States, tango in Argentina, and habanera in Cuba, choro springs up as a result of influences of musical styles and rhythms coming from Europe and Africa.
Now, did you copy and paste that, or is that your writing style? Oh, okay.
Copy
So
and
that's a very like for a casual text message.
I know.
That's a very professional.
Yeah, it's informed and concise.
Very concise.
Mm-hmm.
Well spoken.
So let's see. Yeah. So
let's jump back.
I'm writing a bunch of music in the style of Brazilian choro, and I'm going to present that on September 21st at the Blue Whale, the same night that I'm also releasing Frames 2, the sequel.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. And we talked about, I grew up in upstate New York, and we started talking about I was talking about how teaching brings a lot of meaning to my life, wherein performing is a lot of fun.
Sure.
And then you asked me a question about teaching. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I said that I had remembered what it was like to learn.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really learn orchestral instruments like the vibraphone until I was in college. And then we started talking about how performance brings a different type of joy to my life than teaching.
Yeah, and then I kind of went on a little rant about I'll never understand what it's like to listen to music as not a musician.
Exactly.
So I don't know what a person who's not a musician, I don't want to use the word average or anything. Someone who's not a musician, what their experience like with live music is.
Yeah. What do
And
they
you said
seek
you've
out?
Yeah, and you said you've gotten a lot of feedback from concerts you do from patrons that let you know that there's a high value on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. I talked about how I get a little dark on patrons from time to time because
Sure.
I think that they don't have an appreciation for what's happening musically. It's just it's a look of musicians. They want to see people play.
Yeah.
They don't really want to, necessarily emotionally connect to what is happening.
Some people want to be seen listening to music,
Right. That's
but don't necessarily
that.
want to listen to music,
No, there's a long conversation there.
especially in Los Angeles.
Oh
That
man,
seems to be the
especially
case.
on the jazz scene.
I know, it's crazy.
Right, man. It's so the drummer. You have a trio. Is it you? It's a collective trio that you do the Brack Shop Jam with.
Yeah, but it's mostly. I mean, Steve put that band together,
Okay,
so it's Steve Haas and Ahmet Turkmenoglu and myself.
sure. Yeah, I had Cezanne on here a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Haas is the leader, but I talked to Steve about that,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, man, because him and I were doing another night, the following night.
Mm-hmm.
No, the night
The
previous. We
previous
were
night,
doing
Wednesday,
Wednesdays at the
right.
same club, and that style-wise, it was all over the place. Sometimes we'd do a Brazilian trio with Mitchell Long.
Cool.
Sometimes it was like top 40 R&B soul stuff. Sometimes it was guitar power trio with Dan Cole. But no one would ever. It was no one would ever really show up. But Thursdays were happening the night you guys were doing, and I'm like, man, what? How does that happen?
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that, well, first of all, Thursdays is a more popular night to go out than Wednesdays.
It is, and Steve's thing was like, man, people want to be seen.
There's
So
that.
you open it up to as a session element.
Yes. Right.
Where people can come play and be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's right, and I hated that he was right.
I know.
On that topic, I hate that is true. That people come out to music to engage with the music to be seen and not just absorb.
I think everybody has. I think music is. It's almost like a primordial gift to mankind, in that it's been around for ages. We've used it to communicate probably prior, in a very simple form. We used it to communicate prior to even having verbal communication. It strikes people in different ways. I think, I mean, there. you could have a quartet of musicians and have 4 different reasons as to why each person is there.
Sure.
And those are the people that are making the music, not even necessarily the people that are listening to the music.
Right. You throw occupation
Yeah.
into it. Then if they're professional musicians, I mean, 101 is they got bills to pay.
They got bills to pay, sure. Some people are thinking in terms of, trying to build their reputation.
Sure.
Some people are there just to get their rocks off. So, it's like you just never know. And so because music serves so many different purposes in so many different people's lives, you never know why a person is there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think all the time, too, like, you don't care about the music. You're not here to hear blah, 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 all this and that. And honestly, it's gotten to the point now where I don't care why people are there just as long as they're there.
Okay.
I mean, would I rather play to an attentive audience that can really appreciate what they're hearing and enjoy themselves immensely? Yes.
Right.
That's what I would rather do. I would rather because that's mostly because the music that we both play is it's pretty cerebral stuff. It's not, original jazz music was dance music, right? But there's not too many people dancing to jazz these days unless it's like a kind of a retro swing thing or something along those lines, or like like an undeniable funk sort of element to the music, like Snarky Puppy. But like for the most part, if you're just playing like original jazz music in a trio setting, that's going to be a very cerebral environment in which to hear music. I think that, in that case, I would rather play to people who have the desire and the energy to want to try to understand what's happening, even if they don't have an understanding of what's happening. Because I don't want to, in that type of setting, I don't want to have to feel like I need to dilute my message in order for it to be heard and appreciated.
Right.
But there are some other situations wherein you need to dilute the message in order for it to be heard and appreciated. And although that isn't maybe necessarily my favorite environment to play in, if they're there to enjoy themselves, that's a cool audience as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's still a win because they're still a part of the music because they're there and they're engaged with it.
Exactly.
Whether on a cerebral level or just a dance body
feel
level,
or to be seen, or whatever. Like, as long as they're participating in the listening, it's cool.
Right.
For me. When you're talking about like a background gig, Brack Shop could potentially be a background gig.
Right.
And quite often that first hour, very few people who show up later on to sit in actually show up that first hour to listen to the house band.
Sure.
Which is stupid because you could learn something, but they don't. They don't do it, and so we end up playing to a quote unquote audience that isn't necessarily there to hear the music. They're there because
they got there to sit in first.
Yeah, it's the last hour of happy hour.
Yeah.
So they're not like full on participating. However, this is what I've begun to notice, because we were also talking about how performing, for me, one of the joys of performing is the connection between human beings, be it between me and the people I'm playing with, or me and the audience. And what I've noticed is that the connection of the music to the audience deepens when the connection between the musicians deepens.
Yeah.
And so when Steve and Ahmet and I start playing, and it was like this from the second we first played, because we had never played in that trio ever before our first gig at Brack Shop.
Okay.
It's not like that was a band that played elsewhere.
Right.
Steve just was like, I like this guy, I like this guy. I want to
Sure.
get them together. So he brought the three of us together, and from the moment we started playing, we had that kind of kismet.
Sure.
We all loved and respected the way each other played, and that meant that we would obviously like connect on a deep level. And so what I've noticed is we've actually been able to turn that bar from like a bunch of people watching the end of the game and enjoying happy hour into like a listening audience. I don't know exactly and it's not like we're dumbing it down. I mean,
You're still
playing,
just showing up and playing.
Yeah, we're playing standards and odd meters and doing tunes that are not exactly like 3-chord vamps with a chorus and a verse that everybody can kind of be like, yeah, this is a nice song. Like we're going in, and on top of that, we're going in a very, in a way that jazz musicians go in, which is, in a very cerebral sort of way.
Sure.
But I think also the fact that there's 2 percussion instruments in the band, that has something to do with it, because percussion, even though it's tuned percussion, pitched percussion, it still hits in a way that's different than a saxophone or a guitar. There's a visual element to the vibraphone. I think there's also the element of like, what the hell is that thing?
Right.
People don't see it that often.
Yeah. No, I mean, we did that duo gig, whenever that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
A month ago, maybe. Yeah. And I think you explained 3 or 4 times
what the
instrument even is.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because I think one of the guys came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, my daughter used to play this in school," and I said, "She used to play the vibraphone," and he goes, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, this is a vibraphone."
Or she was crushing it.
I thought it was a xylophone. No, it's not a xylophone. And the thing that you're thinking of also isn't a xylophone. The thing you're thinking of is a glockenspiel. But we won't go there.
Just enjoy your brunch and walk away.
So anyway, I'm not saying that we're somehow in some way superhuman because we're able to transform Brack Shop into a listening room. I think what it is that people are there for different reasons. It is possible to punch through. Also, I'm finally now, and I consider this to be kind of like a small modicum of success in my mind. I am finally at that point where I don't worry too much if people aren't listening. And I think that's because I've focused on deepening the rapport between the musicians.
Yeah.
And I've kind of turned it into sort of like, if that rapport is deep, then people will hear it.
I mean, obviously I've never played with Ahmet because he's another bass player.
Right.
But from playing with you and for as much as I played with Steve, like that's a very sensitive. The two of you are very sensitive listeners, and so assuming, I can only imagine that Ahmet is coming on the same wavelength as a listener.
Absolutely.
When he's playing, so that much sensitivity and control of their instrument and musical fundamentals, that can only lead to good things. And my favorite is when you play with a band regularly and everybody shows up like that. What happens to the same tunes?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they become this other version of themselves.
That's right.
And that's only the snowball effect that happens from playing them regularly.
Absolutely.
So when that was similar to like things that would happen when me, Steve, and Dan Cole were doing kind of the power trio vibe. We just had our collection of tunes that became something completely different, and I always love that. Like, where else can the tune go? Not just while you're playing it, but these kind of arrangements that you just...
Yeah.
That becomes the standard arrangement of the tune.
Right.
That just morphs over months.
Yeah, and also we take for granted what it's like to actually be able to play a tune well and together as a band, because as jazz musicians, we find ourselves playing kind of similar tunes with a lot of different groups.
Right.
And also we find ourselves playing with people who can pretty much crush a tune the first time they've ever played it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've got a personal connection to the song.
Sure.
And then even if everybody can crush the tune on their own individual level, to have a personal connection with one another and with the way that each other plays, that's when, like you said, the thing can start to take on a life of its own. It's different than everybody playing the same tune really, really well at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like...
Because everybody's still kind of in their lane.
Right.
It hasn't really all melded together yet.
That's right.
Everybody's just like, I'm doing here, and we're trusting the natural progression of things. Whoever takes the melody is going to take the first chorus, and whatever. There's still... It doesn't have... the musicianship isn't even in question. Then, like, everybody's going to be fine on the tune. But the synergy that happens, I think that... I miss that a lot.
Do you?
Yeah,
What do
like,
you mean
there's
when you
not
go as a listener? You miss it, or
I miss it as a listener because I don't regularly hear in Los Angeles bands that have been playing together regularly.
right.
It's just a bunch of the same dudes. Like, oh, now he's on the gig, or now he's on the gig, or
Right.
and there's so many kind of pickup gigs like that around that there's not a lot of this. We're inadvertently cultivating a sound that it is only identified by this trio
Mm-hmm.
or this quartet or whatever the group may be.
Right.
Now, as a band leader, how do you go about that? Getting that kind of synergy from your own project.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am guilty of jumping around from one set of personnel to another set of personnel, like, constantly. And that has a lot to do with the fact that, first of all, I have so many different musical things that I want to do, and I feel that there are different musicians who
Have strengths in
have
that
strengths
thing.
in those particular areas, you know. So you wouldn't call a great bebop bass player to play a funk gig unless they also can play great funk, which
Right.
is entirely possible. But I wouldn't. Anyway, so there's that. That was why I would jump around from a lot of different groups, and every CD I released was a different group of people. And
How many
and I
CDs
like
you got
doing
out now?
that. I don't know, probably 9 now or something like that.
Okay.
9 that were properly finished and
Released.
and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
All different concepts?
different concepts, different instrumentation. 3 organ trio records, all different personnel and different music and different concepts. Storyteller was more like kind of like a modern chamber jazz kind of thing. But with this recent group that I have, and a lot of it used to fall under the auspice of Nick Mancini Collective. And I did that because I got sick and tired of having the Nick Mancini Quartet and the Nick Mancini Sextet and the Nick Mancini this and that and that.
Sure.
So it's just the collective, and then I can play under the auspice of that. But now that name has become synonymous with this particular group of musicians.
With which?
Okay, so that would be John Tegmeyer on clarinet.
Well, what's the identity of sound? If I see Nick Mancini Collective, what's my knee-jerk reaction as, like, that's what that thing is if I'm going to go check it out? Is it going to be the chamber thing or more of a straight ahead?
world-inspired and chamber-esque.
Okay. So that's the record, The Frames.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then we got the follow-up one that's coming out
Frames
later this
Die
month,
Hard
next
2.
month. Yeah. Unleashed.
Yeah, September 21st will
Okay.
be the official release of that one.
Okay, so that's what travels with the Collective brand.
Now it does, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that was totally because that happened completely authentically and organically as well. And so I got this monthly residency going at this place called Trip in Santa Monica.
Yep.
And I started that about a little over 2 years ago.
Is that still going?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll be there again at the last Tuesday. It's the last Tuesday of every month.
Okay.
And the thing is that the gig pays hardly any money whatsoever. So instead of being conservative and only hiring a trio and maybe we make $60 a piece, I decided, why don't I just get the biggest stupid band together that I can possibly fit on that stage, since we're all making a nominal amount of money anyway,
right.
that doesn't make a difference, and make hardly any money whatsoever, and just put the focus on the music and having a good time.
Sure.
So
Now, taking the financial burden out of the gig,
it's funny what that does for the music.
and now how did that? When you have to call cats about it, because that's all part of the when is it, the time, the
Right.
pay, the dress, the parking.
Yeah.
It's part of the details.
Yeah.
How do you address it when you call dudes? Now they're clearly friends of yours. You have a working relationship with them already.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll call people. Well, I mean, like I said, I call the same guys every single month. They all have first right of refusal.
Sure.
So at the beginning of each month, I text everybody, and then I'll text them all again halfway through the month and make sure that everybody's still on. And I might get a call the day before that says, someone says, I can't do the gig, man. I got called for something else. And that's fine. I also tell them all that they're not obliged to be there every single month.
Sure.
If there's any month that you just want to take off just for no reason at all, just I don't feel like driving out to Santa Monica, or I'm not feeling it, or what, I want to have a free night to myself, you're perfectly welcome to do that, and I can find someone to sub.
Sure.
So I have had to call subs.
Okay.
And I called Chris Wabich for this last one, and Chris and I haven't played together in years, and it's not like I'm calling him for like high-paying gigs all the time, so he feels like he should do it.
But Chris is the perfect dude that's just in no matter what.
Chris is in no matter what.
If he's got the time, he's in.
Yeah. But I frame it very no pun intended. I frame it very honestly. I say, look, I'm like, do you want to play the residency with me at the end of the month? Great music, great hang, terrible bread.
Yeah.
I just put it out there. No obligations.
Sure.
Like it's not going to reflect how I feel about you. It's not going to reflect whether or not I call you again in the future. None of that is true. The only thing is I just want to get all the seats covered.
Yeah.
And I want to play with people. The thing is that...
Who is Chris subbing for? Who's the...
James Yoshizawa.
Oh, okay. Who plays a lot like Chris. Like every time...
He studied with Chris.
He does, but like even just watching him play. Like
yeah.
Maybe it's because they both like have like a really light build personally. Just the way they move, and it's very...
They also both play a lot of percussion instruments.
Yeah.
So their touch is refined in that regard.
Okay.
And the reason why I thought of Chris is because I know that he's a percussionist, and there are two percussionists in the band. And what I have never wanted was to have two percussionists who just play along with the music. I want them to be an integral part of the sound.
Yeah.
Which places an onus on the drummer to incorporate the percussion into the overall groove. And not every drummer wants to do that.
How do they establish a whole groove incorporating these things that are already existing?
Exactly, which means that probably you're going to be playing 50% less than what you would normally
What kind of
play.
drums... What size drum set do they show up with? Like
well,
really
there's
minimal?
A drum set already at Trip.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's just two tom-toms.
Just like a rock drum set
Yeah,
vibe.
basically.
Okay.
There might be two ride toms and a floor tom. I don't know. Yeah. So, pardon my yawn. So, for me, what's important is that the people who show up and want to be there, and that they want to make music, and that they want to have a good time hanging. I didn't. It's not like I sat down and concocted this particular instrumentation for my band. I didn't do that at all. I just said, like, who do I like playing with?
Right.
If I had my choice, who would be in my band? Who
Sure.
are these people that and then also on top of that, who would I like to have in the band who is also well-rounded, responsible, fun to hang with? There's a lot of other
Yeah. Right.
because I didn't even know what kind of music I was going to be playing once I took this gig on.
Then what did that turn into? A bunch of stuff you've written? Do you?
Yeah.
Is it like
I started writing?
you just okay?
Because I want to bring new stuff every time.
Oh wow! So every month you're writing.
Yeah.
How many on average new charts are you showing up with?
Well, this past month I've been focusing so much on the Shoro that I haven't really been writing new tunes. But for a while, I'd probably come with like 2 to 3 new tunes a month.
Okay, that's solid.
Yeah.
Now this is the second reference to that, so let's dig into what that is. That is folkloric Brazilian rhythms with European counterpoint. That's
right.
That is the nature of choro.
Yeah.
Shoro.
Shoro.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. But the collective is not a Shoro band, although we'll play occasionally a Shoro. But there's a lot of notes, and so to sight transpose that for the horn guys, not fun.
Sure.
So the tunes that I usually end up writing for that band are kind of a little bit more open, a little more expansive, more room for improvisation and more room for building up textures and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is part of the conversation that got lost with this 9-piece band. It's all kind of lead sheet based, so you're not showing in with parts written out for the 9, but it's everybody's responsibility to create this texture.
Right.
Improvise the texture underneath a soloist instead of playing with 9 people.
Exactly, and so then that also prompted me to come up with another concept, which is I call it a cellular concept. And so what I'll do is at the beginning of each tune, I will turn to the band and I'll say bass, drums, guitar, clarinet. And those four are the four that are responsible for the tune.
Okay.
Everybody else is just accoutrement,
Okay.
just gravy.
Yeah.
You come in when you want to come in, you go out when you want to go out, you play a little bit here, you play a little bit there, but the tune is mostly going to be played by these four people.
Now, in your mind, is it always the same instruments on the same tunes? Because that's how you want this tune to speak? Or do you want a fresh take on the material every time?
It's a fresh take on the material.
That's cool.
So sometimes I just kind of like, and because I'm calling it out at the beginning of the song on the stage, I don't like to belabor the point for too long.
Sure.
So I try not to think about it too much.
Right.
So sometimes I'll just say me and percussion, and I'll start playing.
Yeah.
And we start playing, and then people can come in, and I just leave it up to the discretion of the player to decide how much and how little and when to come in and when to go out.
Right. Right. It's really, that's cool. That's a really cool concept.
It's a lot of fun, and it allows, it's like spontaneous orchestration.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Right.
So sometimes I'll go a little deeper. I'll say like horns, just pads on this one.
Okay.
And then you solo and you solo.
Hey, how much of are you kind of just whatever you is it that knee jerk of a reaction, or do you have like a slight concept of sound, or
I have a couple of concepts.
you remember what you did last time, so all right, this time no clarinet,
right?
Because he did it last time.
Yeah, or I'll remember last time that this one particular thing works really well on this.
Yeah.
So like we have a thing in the band where I have a lot of tunes where I write a coda that is like a repeated 4-bar thing, and someone solos over that.
Okay.
So one of the things that I like to do is to have different sections of the song soloed on by different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have an extended intro. That'll be a saxophone solo. And then I'll have one person will solo over the body of the tune.
Yeah.
And then one person will solo while the outhead is being played.
Mm-hmm.
And then one person will solo over the extended coda.
Okay.
I like to call it a blowda. Someone will blow over the coda. And so what that usually means is that like the horns are playing and this is just like a go-to texture. I call it the Adam coda. Adam Ratner is the guitar player in the band. I just call it the Adam coda. And what that means is the horns are going to play the repeated melodic figure, and the band is going to just kind of be.
So this is a lot of direction to give before every tune.
Well, yeah, except that we all kind of know now what.
Oh, there's an understood.
Yeah, so I can just say Adam coda.
Yeah, okay.
And then he knows that he's not playing over the intro. He knows he's not playing over the tune.
Yeah.
He knows that he's going to be featured on the coda.
Interesting. Okay.
Now,
when writing
the intro, also I communicate to them in the course of the song too.
Okay.
Because the 9 guys, I don't need to be playing the whole time. I can do a lot. Actually, I do a lot of direction from the.
That's cool.
Seat.
What does that do? Is there a duality in your mind about this, about giving direction and shaping this thing that's happening in real time, but then like diving back in, playing, going there? Like that's a.
Not so much in the when I'm comping, I'm definitely thinking in terms of like a director.
Okay.
And an orchestrator and an arranger.
Okay.
So my comping is like sometimes it's just like I'll play a little background figure for 12 bars and then pull out, and then sometimes I'll comp under a solo or no comping at all, because when you got 9 people, the best thing you can do is have a bunch of people lay out for diversity.
Right.
It is a little bit of a challenge to go from that into soloing. And as a matter of fact, one time I remember we did a whole set at Trip, and I realized I didn't give myself a solo the entire time.
Nice.
I took no vibe solos for the whole set, and that wasn't intentional. It was just like I just was too busy making sure that everybody else was getting a chance to play and having a good time.
No, but that's cool because then
sure
it's
that it was
focused
being
on the
presented.
collective and
It's
the
focused on the collective, exactly.
concept. Now, how do you write for this? Do you write with the musician who's on the instrument in mind? So Adam's playing guitar. You write specifically for Adam and Adam's style of playing guitar?
Well, that's interesting that you ask that, because another one of my compositional exercises has been to write a tune for everybody in the band,
Yeah.
dedicated to them and inspired by their style of playing.
Yeah. I was doing that for a minute, and it was only a 4-piece band though. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like
taken a little while
wrote
to
one
get
for
through it.
AMAC, wrote one for Mahesh.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't got to Zane's yet, but then that happened.
Yeah, I wrote. So I got that Shoro that I wrote for John, and I got this tune that I wrote for Coop called Coop's Loops.
Okay.
We haven't pulled it into the band yet, but I wrote a tune for Danny. But unfortunately, it's not in the style of the band. It's kind of like a Horace Silver kind of strolling sort of thing, like a swing, like a 50s hard bop swing tune.
Yeah.
Which, look, Coop's a great bass player, so he can walk a bass line on electric. It's going to sound good, but I don't want to hear that.
And most likely he doesn't want to play it. Like I don't.
He doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right to walk on an electric, and it doesn't feel right to play pocket on upright.
Exactly.
Like I get asked the question.
I'd rather hear pocket on upright than walking on electric, though.
Yeah, probably.
My choice.
Yeah.
Nels Henning or Sid Pedersen can play some serious pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
it's just not the feel. Like the whole positioning to the instrument doesn't feel right. The way your body moves in that kind of.
Imagine as a bass player, it's kind of like, it's like playing for me as a drummer, like playing rock and roll with a traditional grip and then playing jazz with a match grip.
Yeah,
like it's weird for me to do that.
It's just not for some reason. Like this doesn't feel like that music.
Yeah, although so many great match grip jazz players. Bill Stewart,
sure.
Dan Schnell,
right.
Jonathan Pinson plays match. Brian Blade plays a lot of match. Sometimes he goes back and forth, but so it can't happen. But these are people who dedicate their lives to playing.
Sure, and that being said, there's dudes that can swing on electric. Steve Swallow, Anthony Jackson.
Right,
I've heard,
exactly. But it still has a vibe to it,
mm-hmm.
But more than anything, because actually Cooper is perfectly willing, and he has brought both basses to the gig. It's that, like, to break out of the thing that we're doing to all of a sudden go into a tune that is not just different stylistically, but like harmonically, melodically, everything is.
It's a drastic shift, yeah.
It's just not what I want to do.
Okay.
So I got to rewrite a new one for Danny that kind of fits with the vibe of the band.
That's Danny Janklow, alto player. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wrote one for Mike Raganese called "Rags to Riches."
Nice.
I wrote one for Adam Ratner called "Atom Bomb." I just got to get them. We got to get them into the band. They're a little bit complex, and so I got to make sure that they have a chance to listen to them and actually look at them. And that's another thing. We don't rehearse.
So how far in advance do you get the music to them?
I try to get it to them a couple of weeks in advance.
Okay. As soon as you're done and comfortable with it, and okay.
And I make. I'll send them a chart, and I'll also send them a MIDI mock-up of it so that they can at least hear what it sounds like.
Nice.
And have something to practice to. I don't. Part of the reason why they're willing to come out to play Trip once a month is because they know that there's no time commitment on them other than like arriving 15 minutes before the downbeat and then leaving whenever they want to leave.
Sure.
And keeping it loose and fun is the key to keeping everybody engaged and on board.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to recording and so.
Now, so you're coming out with your second record with this project. Did you rehearse before the record?
No. No, but I booked the recording session in close proximity to the gig.
Okay. Afterwards. So
and we've been playing these tunes at the gigs for like
that's the way to do it, man. It's like really just get that synergy thing happening on the bandstand, then go into the studio instead of cutting a record and then go gigging the record.
Right, exactly. And this is the way that it used to be done. It used to be that a band would go on tour for 8 months, they'd come off the road, and they'd do a record.
Right.
But now you need the record to go on tour for 8 months.
Right.
So it's really weird. And plus, I mean, I do want to pay people properly.
Right.
Once a month is the most I can ask for people to come out for a speculative amount of money. And it's hard to pay 9 people.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Some gigs, I get, but even like what's considered a quote unquote well-paying gig in LA, I still can only give people like a little over $100 a piece.
Sure.
Because it's a large band.
Right.
But they're so signed on.
That's great. And that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
Especially on a group that size.
I know. I'm really proud of the fact that we've all stayed together, and I can only attest to the fact that it's just that it's fun and easy to do.
Yeah.
And they like the music too.
And so then people coming out to this, I think we got it somewhere off track about talking about patrons valuing live music.
Right.
What's the response at the venue?
Ecstatic.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Especially at Trip. They're just losing it. But at the Blue Whale, we've gotten a really good response there. We got a great response at LACMA when we played last year.
You do the outside concert thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next goal now is to really like step it up, take it to the next level, and get it on some festival stages.
Okay.
How
are you going about that?
Well,
like let's
now I'm praying. No, I mean getting the second record together and being able to show to an agent or a promoter that it's a real project.
Right.
That it's not just some haphazard thing that I threw together, but rather that like this is a group of people that play together, have a chemistry, have a history, have 2 records under their belt. I think that makes a big difference. So once I get that material together, the second record and some of the promotional video material and stuff, I think it should be a fairly easy sell.
Now you have 9 records out, and what year was your first record done?
1999. Actually,
okay.
It's the 20-year anniversary of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the right question to ask, but how would you speak of the way that technology has changed the do-it-yourself musician? Because you've been doing it for 20 years, just
right.
releasing records as an artist under your own name,
Mm-hmm.
not alone just being in the music industry as a sideman and hired guy,
right.
Maybe even producing somebody else's record, whatever. But as an artist and trying to get that name and that music out there, what's it been like to navigate the curve of technology?
Well, I feel like if technology hadn't taken the turn that it did, and put as much ability into the hands of the individual musician to create and release content as easily as it has, I don't know that I would be where I am right now. And that's not to say that my career is exactly where I would want it to be. Obviously there's room for growth there, but certainly through, the power of like Facebook and Instagram and hey, look what I'm doing kind of thing, that has helped an awful lot. Also, if you look at historically the way that the music business has worked, people weren't buying LPs of that they had never heard before. That's what the radio was for. The radio
was the
brought
marketing.
you the music,
Yeah.
and you heard the music, and then if you liked it, you went and bought the LP.
See, I guess when I was young and formative in being an investigative listener, like there was a Borders by my house in Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be a night.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just go to Borders.
But you could listen to it before you bought it.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
I get the
I
endorsement.
loved Borders too. We had a guy.
Right,
who
I remember when they
curated
got the
jazz
listening
department.
stations and you
Amazing.
could scan the barcode and it would do it. But there was a few years there where that wasn't a thing yet. And I would just, like, okay, I've heard this guy's name. Let's say Percy Heath or something.
Okay.
What else is Percy on? And I would just look at the personnel on all these records.
Sure.
And then, then I'd come across someone like Paul Chambers, who was on everything for a few years.
Right.
Or Dave Holland. And I was just buying all these records. And I had no idea who the guys were.
Well, for you, for musicians, of course, we're going to do that. That's an investment into our education.
Sure.
But for the random listener who doesn't really want to take a chance at buying a $15 CD that they don't like, they're more apt to buy a CD if they've gone to a show and listened to the show.
Yeah.
And then bought this, and then wanted to buy the CD.
Right, they've already
They're
vetted
more apt to
the
go
artist.
to a show if they can just go on Instagram and go, "Oh, who's this person?" and listen to some video and watch some videos and listen to some music. Also, there's so much extra information about the artist that you can glean from the way that they manage their profile, be it Facebook, Twitter,
Sure.
or Instagram. That gives you more information to go on when you're hearing the music. It's like if you know that this person has a really interesting sense of humor,
Right.
or if you know that this person has they also take beautiful photos and in their what they present to the world visually lines up with your aesthetic. When you listen to their music, you're going to hear more, right? So, I think
Yeah, you're gonna.
hear
I agree with that.
differently
Yeah,
than
of course.
if it were just to drop the needle.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can't remember who it was that I came across someone on K-Jazz the other night. I didn't recognize the recording, and I could barely recognize the playing, and I loved it.
Okay.
And then I found out that it was someone that I always thought I vehemently couldn't stand.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna mention the name, but I was like, "Oh wow, that's interesting."
Is it someone you knew or play with, or just like
No,
legend?
Just it was
Okay.
a legend whose music I never really liked, or always kind of thought was whatever, corny or whatever it was. And I can't remember who it was, so I can't. And I say the other night, this is probably months ago,
Yeah.
but I just remember it starkly because I was like, "Wow, that's that person."
Yeah.
God, I thought I couldn't stand them. Next thing I know, I'm like checking out their stuff on YouTube, and then now I'm like, oh, if they come to town, I think I might like to check them out. And
Okay.
totally, So the music, I think that the product comes before the patronage,
Right.
and that's an important thing for musicians to remember,
Sure.
and to not because when YouTube and Facebook and Instagram first came out and was an opportunity for people to put their music out in the world, people who were used to making their money selling CDs felt very strange about allowing people to hear their music without
any kind of transaction.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing is now, I've got an 8-channel recording rig and all the mics and all the stands and cables and stuff like that. I can record all sorts of music and I have recorded all sorts of music that I just release just for people to listen to.
Yeah.
That I wasn't concerned about ever making a CD that I would then market and make commercially available. It's just material to just adjacent material.
Sure.
I do this thing too. I don't plan on making a CD or maybe I've only got 4 tunes that I've written in this style, but here, check out these 4 tunes. I have an outlet for that now that I wouldn't have had otherwise. SoundCloud is brilliant for that.
Okay.
And so I think I think all of these things are really positive.
As far
things.
as marketing, yes. As far as trying to monetize it,
Maybe not so much.
yeah, right, because that's always all the blog articles that go around about what people are making on Spotify or
But I don't make my money from record sales, so I'm not as concerned about that.
Sure.
I do make my money selling. I do make some money selling CDs at shows, but people come to shows because I'm able to
Because they've heard it.
tantalize them through social media.
Sure. Right.
You know what I mean? And that builds.
So CD sales, you're still moving actual CDs.
Oh yeah,
Really? Those are
absolutely. I just reprinted another 100 copies of Frames because I know that at the Blue Whale show, especially if I can sell them as a set, last year's and this year's, that's gonna move.
sure.
There are people out there who absolutely love to take
A tangible product. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I used to love the actual reading through the liner notes and
Sure.
and
also
doing
gives
that
them
whole
an
process.
opportunity to have a few minutes talking to the artist.
Yeah.
That means a lot to people.
Mm-hmm.
We did our part by presenting the music for them.
Sure.
They want to do their part. If they really enjoyed it, they want to show you their enjoyment. That's their way of being involved.
Right.
That's why people applaud.
Sure.
They want to be part.
They
want to
engage with it. Yeah.
They're part of the exchange, And so if they can also have an opportunity to have a chat, and I love talking to people that come out to my shows.
Okay.
I think it's one of the best moments of the night.
Really?
Just get a chance to talk, meet all sorts of different people, sign the CD, get to know their name, have a nice
one-on-one connect.
Interaction with them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome personally, and they want to show their appreciation for me so much so as to first of all even come out of their house at all, then go to a place and spend money on a cover charge and spend money on some drinks and some food, hang out, and then drop some extra money on a CD. Like that is value to them. And if I am worth that value to them, which, by the way, going out to hear music at the Blue Whale on a Friday night, 2 people, that's an expensive endeavor.
Yeah, just 15, 20 at the door. Then
15, 20
I don't know
at
if
the
there's
door,
a minimum there.
$20. No, there isn't.
Okay.
But, if you go,
there's parking, just navigating LA traffic.
Exactly, dude. Putting on clothes.
Right.
Getting in your car, driving through the traffic, paying $10 to park.
Just dealing with downtown.
Yeah, dealing with downtown. Like, all of that is, that people are willing to give that much to come hear my music is incredibly meaningful to me.
Sure.
So if I can take a few minutes to chat and sign a CD and shake a hand, like, I think that's what it's all about.
Nice.
It's about that and being able to do what I love for people that want to hear me do it.
Right.
With people that I love to do it with.
Right. Yeah, there's no real... there's no downside to that situation.
No.
So, speaking of the do-it-yourself musician and the nature of patrons and all that, you're doing it's called the Side Pocket?
The Other Pocket.
The Other Pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Side Pocket would be cool because you should pull it.
Cool. Yeah, I like that.
There's a little... You could do it all at pool halls.
That's brilliant.
I want 15%. I want 15% of...
Of 0? 15%
Yeah.
of 0 is still 0.
Okay. I'm in.
All right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
That sounds like a jazz musician mentality to me. It doesn't pay anything?
Sure.
I'm in.
Sure. I'll dedicate my life to it then.
Yeah, why not? Sure, I'll lose 30 years.
All right. The Other Pocket.
So the Other Pocket, the reason for... It's a kind of a multifaceted reason for doing this. First of all, what it is a fly-on-the-wall perspective of a hang with another musician or another few musicians where we get together, we play tunes, standards, some of my tunes, some of their tunes, have a little chat in between the songs.
Okay.
Like basically, we get together and have a session, but I let people in via Instagram Live.
Okay. Is there any time parameter on Instagram Live?
Yes, it's only an hour. It'll only stream for an hour. And you can't save an hour-long video to your story.
Okay.
It'll stay archived for 24 hours, but then disappear.
So where do people have to catch it live or
they gotta catch it live, and they gotta just tune in next time.
And then when do you is there a standardized release time? It's always Thursday at 8 or something.
It's usually in the afternoons.
Okay.
So between like 12 and 1:30 I'm generally starting.
Yeah.
The idea is that people are on lunch break and they can, instead of they're gonna probably go on Instagram anyway. Right. Why not go on Instagram and check out some music, And I get a pretty decent viewership.
Okay.
So one of the reasons is to kind of, it's for promotional purposes. Another reason is I believe that people are usually more interested in the artist than they are the art. And this is an opportunity to be kind of like intimate with the artist.
Yeah, it's like a look behind the curtain
sort of way. Yeah, right, exactly. Fly on the wall. So they get to see how we interact when we're not on stage.
Sure.
But are still performing. Which and I think, personally, I think my musician friends are some of the funniest, most entertaining people I have ever known. So I would want people to be able to benefit from listening to the banter.
Already. I hope you've done one with Sinisi.
I haven't, but
I
that
actually
want to
be a fly in the wall and just come here and sit and watch you two just.
You might have to be the bass player on that one.
I would love to do that. That would be hilarious.
So let's start thinking.
Right,
about
it would just be
sure.
just Christopher Walken impressions for 45 minutes. It'd be amazing.
And then the other reason for doing it is there are so many musicians in this town that I love to hang with and that I want to make music with, but I don't want to have to wait for a gig to come around in order to do it.
Right.
So
that's a cool way to like check in with dudes you haven't.
Yeah.
Totally.
Let's get together and play. And oh, by the way, I'm going to put my phone up and I'm going to
let's make it a little thing. Yeah.
50 people will check it out or something like that.
That's cool. Now, is that through your personal Instagram, or is there a separate?
No, it's through my personal Instagram.
Okay. What's the handle there? Let's go and plug it. Might as well.
Nick the Mancini.
Nice.
Yeah, that was invented by Afton.
Invented
and implemented by Afton. Yeah, so I don't have one currently booked, but I think I might just make my next one a solo concert.
Okay.
And I'm just looking for a day at which I can do it. It might be Thursday during the day. I don't really have much going on, so maybe this Thursday, the 8th.
Nice. This should be out Wednesday. I mean, I really hope I can find the first half.
I hope so too, because it was really entertaining.
Yeah, there was some good stuff.
Weird, just non sequitur.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I'm pretty good. All right, so that's Nick Mancini. I will have links to his Instagram page up at thebassshed.com /podcast/ Nick Mancini. And yeah, there will be links to all his stuff there. After we got done recording, I had dinner with Nick and his wife Afton, his lovely wife Afton. And I think that conversation could have been a podcast in and of itself. That was a really cool conversation to sit and talk with the two of them. I can't remember the fullness of the conversation, but it was a really, really cool, interesting, self-aware conversation about a lot of topics, and I had a lot of fun with both of them, eating spaghetti and talking to Nick here, and the part that got lost. So there's all that. Coming up next week on the podcast is bassist Steve Jenkins. Steve's got some CDs out on Spotify and iTunes, Apple Music, all that. Check him out. And we will learn more from Steve next week. So thanks, everybody, and catch you on the next one. 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 And catch you on